In this video, I would want to talk more about what I don't like about courses on the introduction to sociology, which one can already find online, such as the introduction to sociology by OpenStax, even though it has been reissued in the third edition relatively recently. I think that one could do more than that. Once again, once I go through its materials, once I go through its list of references, I ask myself whether one could maybe think of a different point of view, whether one could possibly add more sources. Is there anything missing? Should one maybe not think of sources which should be in open access as opposed to closed access, and then how one can actually maybe approach classical texts in sociology in more depth. In other words, whereas there is a lot of emphasis being placed on the integrity of the presentation of main concepts, main ideas in sociology, one could also maybe think about more in-depth reading of certain texts of certain classical works in sociology, and gaining more of a nuanced understanding of what sociology is about, what are the main issues, what are the main contradictions, things of this type. In other words, I think that even though it can be very heavy in terms of reading load on the students, and then there's also always a trade-off in between, okay, what one teaches in terms of the pace of teaching, in terms of how much of effort students are supposed to spend on a course, on a given course, and how much on the other hand, one needs to create exercises, quizzes, etc., which will fit into what the students are studying in a given course. And maybe as opposed to something like an individually designed course, which can be more idiosyncratic, and then there's also a question of accreditation. It was a thing that once one is not necessarily teaching a course in the university framework, if these are courses are done a la carte, in other words, individually taught individually, then the question becomes, okay, how does one standardize? How does one assess the success of which course, etc., etc. So that I think that when I think about teaching sociology differently, I also think about, okay, what are the pitfalls, what are the challenges, both for me as an instructor and for students who will be studying this is the subject, using the materials, using the video guidance, using the instructions I will be providing along the course, and what are the opportunities for the hybrid presentation materials as part of thinking that, let's say, key texts which present key topics in sociology can all be found in the classical sociological texts. In other words, whereas when I think of sociology as a discipline with a point of origin in maybe very hybrid sources, let's say, more recent textbooks of sociology always emphasize the contribution of female sociologists, or let's say perspectives from outside of the West, which is very important. There's no question about that. But then, and I think that maybe one actually needs to create a separate course on those points of view, which will give the students an opportunity to actually study in detail female perspective on social thought, or let's say non-Western perspective on sociology, let's say something that was already done outside of the West in past centuries, which could be a great source of insight on what could be maybe a Chinese perspective, or what was done in the Chinese academic mediocre academic environment in terms of social thought, in terms of understanding of society. Let's say we all know in general that, let's say, in the East, in the Chinese context, where, let's say, countries affected by Chinese culture, or in China itself, the issue harming, let's say, or, let's say, Asian values is very important, but then it is very superficial, and one might need to have a more of a close reading of what has been going on, or what were the main notions. Let's say, let's say, maybe derived from the Chinese philosophy, maybe derived from Chinese thought, etc., etc. In other words, there is a sense of once one steps out of the classical narrative of social theory, social thought, then one is somehow is groping for the points of reference. Theoretically, historically, and I think this is on the one both a challenge in terms of it can actually prevent going into that type of direction, and be a great area to explore as something that could be of interest and of value further afield.